Ladies and gentlemen, happy Juneteenth, everyone, and thank you for joining Marked by Wrestling for a special deviation from the wrestling conversation into something we've long wanted to get into, a conversation surrounding the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or the MCU. I am your host, Marked by Wrestling, and joining me today, y'all know him. Y'all known him longer than you know me. He's the YouTube streamer, $1 million champion. He is the Baron of Bootios. He is the one who is not afraid to demonstrate and get up and walk off stage if Jey Uso is not. The only man on this planet that loves Jey Uso more than his daddy. Ladies and gentlemen, from A&B Convos, Wrestling Edition. Welcome, A, to the set.
Right, baby.
Welcome.
It's me, Oos.
Main event, AJ here in the house. The phenomenal AJ, if you will. So glad you're here, man. So glad you're here. I'm going to do a little shameless plugging. We're going to throw a little banner on the bottom of the screen. If you guys enjoy this tonight and you don't follow me on TikTok or Instagram, those are my handles. I talk nothing but movies there. This is where we do wrestling, but and as we should, because we're all together on that. But I know a lot of us have a lot of fun talking movies and stuff, and I do that all the time on that other channel as well. So all kinds of stuff. All right. So, my friend, I'm really excited about this conversation because I feel like as long as we've been friends, you've been teasing this conversation more than The Rock teasing that we're actually going to finish his story about souls and finessing finishes. Yeah. We can't help it. We'll probably sprinkle a little wrestling terminology throughout this conversation the same way we sprinkle movie terminology through our wrestling talk. There's a symbiotic relationship, if I can get it back to Marvel there for a second. Ever since we've been friends, you've always breadcrumbed me a little bit of like, I've got thoughts about Marvel, Steven. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk. And then all of a sudden it's amen and we have to go home from church, or, there's a new, somebody's getting injured or released or something from WWE, and we pivot our attention to other things. And so now is the time. I will say, by the way, yes.
I did read something. I know we're not talking WWE, but I did read a little something earlier today. I think I sent it to you about Liv Morgan's injury, that it looks like this might require surgery after all.
Well, whatever she needs to get back. I mean, she is an MVP of that women's division. She's done such good work. I wouldn't want her coming back too soon. And I will say, without trying to sound, I'll say briefly about that. I mentioned this. I think I mentioned this a little on Tuesday for NXT. But like, if there was ever a time where WWE could get away with advancing her story and still having a place for her to come back to, they have set up a nice little scenario with Roxanne Perez and Raquel Rodriguez and Judgment Day and Dom and stuff, to where they could still have something, juicy for her to sink her teeth into when she comes back. So hopefully, she'll still be, I don't want to say front and center, but not forgotten. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 6 months. They're saying 6 months.
Oh, yeah, that's rough.
A bummer.
Yeah,
what a bummer.
That's let's see, we're in June. That's December. Which, listen, I'm not fantasy booking, but that's just back in time for the Royal Rumble and the road to WrestleMania. So if you're going to miss 6 months of the year, at least she'll, Lord willing, she'll be back for the most lucrative time of the year for herself.
I guess.
Sophie did mention this conversation would make more sense if we both seen Thunderbolts. I'm at least glad that neither of us have seen it yet. So that won't be a factor.
Sure, seen it already, but that's
okay. So I'll tell you a brief story. I was there in the theater on opening day in IMAX for it. I've seen the first 15 minutes of it, and then everyone's fine, but I had what was perceived to be a family emergency arise at that moment, walked out of the theater, have not gone back. So at this point, I might be too late because I'm not going to a theme park to go. I'm not going to get too geocaching on where I am, but I ain't paying anything extra to get into the theater to see it. And it's not playing anymore, I don't think, at my local. AMC. So yeah, well, but by August it'll be on Disney Plus probably, so I can catch it then. But yeah, I heard nothing but good things about it though, and I am a big fan of an ensemble cast doing its thing. So I have cautiously optimistic hopes for
it. Fair enough.
All right, man.
Fair enough.
You are the Marvel Senate.
So you lead, I follow.
Okay. It has been with us for 17 years. Started in 2008. It's crazy to think it's been that long. We're probably, I didn't do my homework beforehand, but we've got to be clocking in close to 30 movies, if not more, not even counting the TV shows and stuff at this point. So there's a lot of properties. You had one major, you can't take the wrestling. You can take the guy out of wrestling. You can't take the wrestling out of the guy. AJ, they've had one long angle, from the beginning.
Yep.
To the the Infinity Saga, and then they've had whatever has been since then, and now we're leading towards things like the Fantastic Four and Doom and Galactus, and of course the next big destination down the road is Doomsday and Secret Wars, at least in title. Civil War was also a title, but didn't fully, match up to what comic readers said. And I'm sure that'll be part of our discussion is comic source material versus cinematic licensing. Some of which not under their control, some which under their control, they just made different decisions. But that being said, here we are at the MCU, where we are. Fantastic Four coming out next month. And AJ, I know you have thoughts about it as a whole, and let's just start at the beginning. I mean, I'm not going to go film by film, but like that would have to be a series, which if this goes off well, maybe we can revisit that. But the from I am Iron Man to I am Iron Man. From Iron Man to Endgame. What's your impressions there? I know you have thoughts and insights, and I open the floor for you to share them, and I'll react as appropriate.
It's tough. It's tough. I'm not gonna lie. It's tough. The first Avengers comes on constantly on TV. You generally can turn it on any time of the day. It's sort of like what they used to say about, I think it was Gilligan's Island or the Brady Bunch. At any given time on any TV somewhere in the world, it's playing, and I feel like that's the same for Avengers or Thor, Love and Thunder. Like there's just some films that they just constantly revolve around.
The MCU is the new Nick at Night for sure.
It is that is yes. So I will say this, and we can kind of go on from here because I don't want to take up too much time in my initial thoughts on this. The first Avengers film, comic books have been around for a long time. Cartoons have been around for a long time. We've seen some iterations. People who may not have seen it, like if you go back on YouTube and you'll see like there was an Avengers thing, there was a Thor, there was a like they've done some weak attempts at bringing the lore of the MCU to light. This is really the first time, this film, the first Avengers that came out, Robert Downey Jr. This is really the first time we got a really serious attempt at it. And it started with Iron Man. Like you said, he started this whole thing. And that film in and of itself was actually a decent film. Iron Man, played by Robert Downey Jr., I think was the perfect guy to play that character, 100%. So that entire phase, I generally enjoyed. Something that I've mentioned on our lives, I think I mentioned it in your live before, what I hate to see, and this is me coming from film school. I'm a film school graduate, so I've argued with my teachers about this in the past. I've argued with people about this in the past. And this kind of goes to the last James Bond film. If anybody has seen the last James Bond film with Daniel Craig.
No Time to Die.
I think we all know what happened at the end of that film. I hope at least we saw it. And I got issue with that. I got real issue with that. The thing is, I'm also a starving actor. Okay. I'm in SAG-AFTRA, and I've done some stuff, some TV, some commercials. I've done a B, horror film. So I've done some stuff, but it drives me nuts. It drives me nuts to no end, especially when you are a struggling actor, that you finally get a role that is the role of roles. This may not be your Hamlet per se, but this is the role that really bankrolled you. This is the role that people are like, yes, I need more. Like, this is the role. And I've seen it constantly throughout the years in TV and films, where you have an actor who finally gets a big, gigantic role. And you just, after a certain period of time, you're like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah, I want to move on with my life. Yeah, I don't really care. I made my money. Time for me to get out. And it drives me nuts. It drives me nuts because there are countless actors out there that would love to be in your position. I've had enough humble pie in my time to know that if I've got a role that is popular, I'm going to ride this thing till the wheels fall off. Basically, I'm going to be the Detective Sipowicz. I'm going to be Dennis Franz in NYPD Blue, and I'm riding that horse till that horse comes to a stop of its own volition. I'm not going to jump off of the train like all the other actors did just because I don't want to do it anymore. So that's the thing that I will have to say when you have an actor that says, I don't want to do it, and they decide to jump ship. When you have directors and writers taking creative license with certain characters that they have no business taking creative license for, that is changing the very essence of who these people are. I got issue with that, especially when it comes to superheroes, whether it be DC or whether it be Marvel. I take umbrage with this. I also don't like my main characters dying. The thing about dying in a story is it's supposed to push another character's arc over. It's a push off the ledge. And we saw a lot of that going on towards the end of the MCU, especially. And things are breaking up. Factions are breaking up. We saw what happened with the end of Guardians of the Galaxy. So it's like WWE, where you take the time to build a faction and you cultivate, you nurture, you water this faction, you sing to it, you pet the faction. You want this thing to grow and get popularity, and people love it, to only destroy said faction in some way, shape, or form. And it just bums me out. It bums me out because what ends up happening is what we ended up seeing now. Like you said, we've got Doom coming out, and guess who took off the mask? And guess who's back? Guess who's back again? And it's like, that wouldn't have happened if we had learned from the past. That wasn't the original plan, to bring that actor back as that character. They needed to do something to re-energize this franchise. And that is my entire point, is that if you don't start fussing around with stuff that you don't need to fuss around with in the way that you've done it, there's no reason to do a hard pivot. It's an R-Truth scenario. Leave it alone. Now, granted, you push this man off into something else, so he's a Ron Killings now, but he's still R-Truth. I don't know what Dr. Doom is going to be. I don't know. This seems like it's going to be an alternate universe thing. Is it going to be a Tony Stark thing? I don't know. I'm very curious. But now my curiosity is piqued. The eyebrow is raised. And now I do kind of want to see how this is going to fit into this situation. So I don't like the fact that we have these characters. We're running through 10 years, 17 years of this entire universe to just be at the end like, dang, all of this stuff just kind of crashed and burned to some degree. And now we've got to go on with a new phase. And I don't want to go on with a new phase if the old phase just got disbanded, because you're going to do the same thing again. You don't learn from your history. And if you don't learn from your history, it's doomed. See what I did there? Dr. Doomed to repeat itself. And I have issue with that. That's where I'm. That's how I'm.
Okay, that's the opening volley from AJ. Like to do that. You know, in a lot of my wrestling talk, my movie talk and stuff, I try to like think about things at the lay of the land, the context of things as they were when they happened. And 2008 was an interesting time for superhero movies because really all we had was Batman, Spider-Man, and Wolverine in the world for the most part. Getting films from there, Iron Man actually came out the same year as The Dark Knight, which looking back on superhero movies is kind of a peak time for things. And yeah, and also like Robert Downey Jr. was not really an A-list name when the first Iron Man came out. Like he was a rehabilitated character, you know, I mean, a rehabilitated actor, both literally and creatively. And so, you know, it just so happens, and I think this is something maybe not, you know, 100%, but I would argue more often than not, one of the things the MCU had going for it in its early days was its casting, like who they put in those roles, and I think Robert Downey Jr. might be he was the first one, and he might be the quintessential, you know, casting choice that they've made all this time. At least he's in the argument. And so the hard thing though is then they go, and I'm just going to jump in here a little bit and into some of the early phase 1 history. Then they go and get, you know, Edward Norton as the Incredible Hulk at first. And then they get you know, there's actually not a large amount. You get Scarlett Johansson, you know, as Black Widow, but even then she wasn't like a megastar yet at that point. And what's interesting is they were casting this sort of like half and half, because you had Samuel L. Jackson in the background there somewhere as well. You had this sort of half and half of quality name actors and also some nobodies. And I don't mean that I mean, all these people I'm about to say were nobodies are all household names now because of Marvel. We didn't know who Chris Hemsworth was. We didn't know who Chris Evans was. I do know, and I mean, I know that Chris Evans was in the Fantastic Four, the Fox Fantastic Four before that, but like, dude wasn't a household name. And we had, you know, Hemsworth, Tom Hiddleston, you know, as Loki, and I mean, you also had like the Anthony Hopkins playing, you know, Odin and stuff. And wildly, that first Thor movie was directed by Kenneth Branagh, who, like, if you guys are familiar with Harry Potter, was Professor Lockhart in the second Harry Potter movie, and a widely and highly accomplished like theater actor. Like he was that was like a Gunther of actors, like the screen is sacred, like kind of actor, you know, Hopkins, and like so it's this weird, and Edward Norton too. These were guys are craft actors, right? And that's a risk when you go into franchising, because these are the sort of AEW, like Bryan Danielson, John Moxley kind of actors who are like, I don't want to do it the same cookie cutter way for 10 movies. I want to go do this kind of movie in Japan. I want to go I want to do a deathmatch movie. You know, I want to, you know, whatever. I'm mixing all my metaphors on purpose because of who our audiences, who our audience is. So, you know, I think there is some maturity and some wisdom in knowing when you have a good, secure, recurring role available to you. But that's also not why some people get into acting. And so sometimes people want to get that. I mean, I think it's either Nicolas Cage or Samuel L. Jackson. I can't remember who, but they're like, I do the big Disney movie so that I can get away with doing my little weird indie movie, you know, like, and so one thing finances another for their career. And so in acting, that doesn't bother me as much. I think it probably bothers me more in wrestling than it does in acting, because acting is so big. I do have some sort of retroactive disappointment with some of the ground rules they'd set in the MCU, like, because they started off saying, and of course they've already gone back on this now and are about to in a big way. Once you've been cast in the MCU, that's who you are in the MCU, and you don't get recast. You don't play another character. Obviously, that's already long gone. With Chris Evans, definitely with Downey, and a few others. But also, and this also to a degree isn't true anymore either. I think I remember them at some point saying, like, once you're dead in the MCU as well. And so, which is like, I feel like one of the most arrogant things you can say about comic book properties, because they don't have a meme-like phrase, comic book death, for no reason. Like, no one's ever, like, the only person who's ever stays dead in comic books is Uncle Ben. And like, and that's it. Like, this is kind of the figure of speech. So I feel like they had these really grandiose plans once things started really hitting a high gear of wanting to preserve integrity. And I know that probably came from a place of wanting to secure continuity and stuff. And that stuff I really do appreciate, is the attempts to secure continuity. And let it be said too, that first 10 years, the 23 movies or whatever it was at the time, nobody's ever done anything like that before, to the degree of continuity, to the degree of execution. And so I'm going to say something positive, because I know you've always mentioned Endgame as a point of contention for you. I cannot, and I'm not trying to say give it all the awards or anything like that, but the fact, to use another critic's description, that they were able to land all those planes in that movie, that they were able to tie up so many ends and resolve. And when I say resolve, I don't necessarily mean killing anybody, but like just bring so many different story threads to a conclusion in that one movie so satisfactorily, for my money anyways. It was amazing. And I'll say this one thing too before I hand it over to you, because I've wanted to say this to people for a long time, and it's hard to find my audience who I think will appreciate it. But like, they booked that movie so well. They booked the last 45 minutes of that movie so well, because I was, first of all, Thanos is generational heel, by the way, as well. Like the way they built him up so well, it meant something in Infinity War when he got cut. You know, it meant something for Captain America to hold his gauntlet in place. You know, like these very small victories. It's like back in the day, if you could knock Andre the Giant down, forget a pinfall. If you could just even knock him down, you were over. But it puts over these heroes in a way, right? So the big thing in Endgame, right? The portal sequence, on your left, all that whole sequence from start to finish, still maybe one of my favorite sequences in all superhero movies. And I'm not some loner out here saying I'm unique in that. I know it is for a lot of people, but what was so good about it is that I like to think of myself as someone who's really paying attention in the films that I see, trying to think, not necessarily trying to predict what's going to happen, but figure out what's going on. Right. So when Falcon, when he hits Cap with the on your left, I'm immediately, because I'm already seeing that one shot, that amazing shot of Cap standing down the entire army by himself, right? Which I was, and also kudos to them for having the guts to, and this is why I say kudos to them for having guts to kill people, because I thought Cap was done at the very first time I saw it. I'm like, okay, so this is, because I was assuming all the OGs were going to go out in some kind of way. And so I was just like, okay, well, this is how Cap does it. This is the most baller way for him to go out. Like, I can do this all day. And one, on your left is basically like the Babyface's music, the glass shattering, the music hitting, and you're like, oh crap, I totally forgot. First of all, I totally forgot that they had resnapped at that point. They made me forget that they resnapped, which was brilliant. And then the next piece of that, which is something I always like to kind of expose about myself, getting caught up in the moment, marking out, if you will, is that I was just assuming that it was going to be that team of like 15 Avengers against everybody. You know, the guys from Titan, you know, the Avengers that were in Wakanda.
Yeah.
Cap, and the guys who were still there. And then when every wizard came out and every Ravager came out and every Wakandan came out, I was like, oh, I mean, like I haven't had such a, I mean, that was a visceral experience. And it was so good of Disney. I'll say this, at the towards the end of the lockdowns and the pandemic, they had this sort of like, it was basically like a please come back to the movies commercial. And they showed that sequence from a fan's live reaction of like everyone just losing their mind, you know, coming in that moment. And like that's a moment that they earned, they worked for, that they earned, that it paid off. And if they, even if everything else is mid-grade from here on out, like they will always have achieved that for me in its totality. Again, wasn't a perfect movie. There are no such things as perfect movies. But that was an awesome moment for me, for sure. But I think Hulk in particular, I know you've said a few Endgame issues. So let's talk this out. How do you feel about Avengers? This is really just like a rage trap. I invited AJ to come in and ask questions about, see how quickly I can get him to crash out.
You know, I'll tell you what. When it comes to Endgame, that scene, like we said, hey Cap, on your left. I mean, goated. Perhaps one of the greatest moments in cinematic history. Just absolutely goated. Will not lie. Gave you the goosebumps because Captain America was ready to do it all by himself. You know, it's like that's the heart that this man had. And the fact that he didn't have to do it was great. The cool thing is seeing the portals open and how many people showed up. It was a stark reminder to how many people had disappeared in the snap. Like I really wasn't thinking about it. I've thought about it more of a microcosm sort of a way, like this person was gone, this family was gone. Like some people have bounced, but like the world kind of kept spinning. No, it was a significant amount of people that were just gone, that materialized all at the same time, that Thanos and his people were not expecting, they were not counting on. And I realized that Thanos thinks about that. It's like, I'm going to X out certain amount of people. I don't think he really considered how many people he really X'd out in that moment, because it was quite the shock. Like, oh my gosh, when you see it, it's one thing to do something and have it be kind of faceless. Like, that's why people like to, like, you've got the keyboard warriors and they're hitting their thumb, you know, like it's a lot easier to do it from a distance than it is to see it in person. Like, I'm going to see a whole crowd of people and all of you're fired. You know, nobody wants to do that.
And to be fair, that Thanos had not been successful in snapping. It was a different Thanos who actually pulled it off. So I don't think he even had the opportunity to truly comprehend the length, breadth, and depth of that.
Exactly. And like Sophie Dophie saying, that was Chadwick Boseman's rest in peace final one before he passed.
He did have one more, just real quick, so I can recommend it to people. He had one more after that called Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. It was a musical film about a bunch of blues musicians. Coleman Domingo is in it. Viola Davis.
That's right.
That came out afterwards. I think that was his last one, which was amazing, by the way. He acted. He knew that was his last shot, and he laid it all out there. It was great.
Yes, but you're absolutely right.
His last big budget thing for sure, though. His last theatrical movie.
Exactly. His last, and it's for sure his last Marvel. So, you know, when it comes to Endgame, again, I'm gonna say it as plainly as I can. Creative license. Okay, this boiled down to creative license. Directors will just take creative license because they feel like they can, because they want to. They have a vision. They want to start messing with things that aren't broke just cuz. And in my opinion, quite frankly, Robert Downey didn't need to die. Tony Stark did not need to die in that film. I think that was unnecessary death. Natasha Romanoff, I mean, clearly we see her family kind of going on. They carry her death around with her. I'm on the fence about that death. But the Hulk. I know there have been a lot of things that are done in comics. Comics are like daytime soap operas. If you could think it, it's already happened. Sure. Like it's just something that's already been done. The wildest thing you can imagine. So everything under the sun has happened in comic books. I've never been a big comic book person. So I'm sure somewhere in the lore of the Incredible Hulk, he was wounded to a point where you wouldn't think that it could happen. I'm sure. That's not how I've ever seen him, in movies and cartoons and what have you. So the thing that really upset me about that is if it wasn't for She-Hulk, which I know a lot of people panned, and a lot of people are panning the stuff that's coming out on Disney Plus. If it wasn't for She-Hulk, we would have been left with a mortally wounded Hulk. I've mentioned this to you. I've mentioned this in our live. When it comes to the Hulk, this is something else that really bummed me out because you betrayed your own thought process when it comes to characters' deaths. Like I said, a character's death is supposed to push somebody else's character over a little bit. That's really what's supposed to happen. I realize some people just die because they just die, but if a main character dies, it has to have a profound effect on somebody else's main character, more so than other people. Ronan's family got snapped. Hawkeye's family got snapped, and he turned into Ronan. Freaking fantastic! He turned into John Wick. Basically, we went to see Ballerina, and John Wick was in that film. And like I said, I'd never seen any of the John Wicks. This made me want to go see John Wick. And people in that film was like, that's freaking John Wick. Like, oh my gosh, that's Jason Bourne. Like, there's just some people you just don't want to mess with, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what Ronan was. That's what Ronan became. Hawkeye wasn't that guy. He just wasn't. But Ronan was.
He was just a marksman.
He went a little nutty.
It was business with Hawkeye. It was personal with Ronan.
Facts. Revenge. Vengeance. The only person to get through to Bruce Banner, to get through to the Hulk, like nobody else, was Natasha Romanoff. You're telling me you decide to have this man be Professor Hulk, really the weakest of the Hulks, the smallest of the Hulks, and that's something else I want to talk about, something else I want to bring up. The one person that got through to that hard exterior all the way to his gooey center. She dies. And he doesn't lose his freaking mind. He doesn't go, I'm not going to say the word, but he doesn't go ape crazy. He doesn't turn into World Breaker Hulk. Hulk got his butt whooped by Thanos. Whooped so bad that he didn't want to come out again. Ever. That's insane. We saw as close to World Breaker Hulk as I think we've ever gotten in this Marvel Cinematic Universe when the Scarlet Witch messed with his mind and you had the Hulk Buster come out. That Hulk was freaking off the chain. We couldn't even get that.
And the Hulk who fought that wolf in Ragnarok.
Thank you.
Ragnarok Hulk was a good Hulk. Yeah.
The angriest that we saw the Hulk for the first time in that Avengers film when they fell through, and he's with Natasha, and she's like, "I will get you out of here. I promise. I swear on my life, your life." And he just goes, and he has that moment where he's looking at her. He's like, "I'm sorry, I can't control this. You might want to bone out right about now." We couldn't even get that level of anger from the Hulk. Okay, I had issue with that. That's weak sauce. The one person that got through to him, and he's just all like, yeah, just that's well, I guess we got to move on with that. We like he was like the Nutty Professor. I guess we just gotta, what are we doing?
Bruce
and we were stuck with it.
Yeah.
We were stuck with it. Like we were sweet. That's what we were left with. Why would you do this? Why would you do this? It doesn't. You're betraying everything that these characters are. You're betraying the very things that you're saying the whole point of a character dying is supposed to do. And I'm just sitting here and I just got to take it. No. Yeah. And then you've got Steve Rogers. Oh my gosh. Captain America, a man out of time. The whole reason he was who he was, because he was in a whole different category of humans decades prior. It was a different time. It was different kind of people. You take a super soldier serum, and now you've got this incredible strength along with this character that you are who you are at your core. And you're able to do things in the MCU that, quite frankly, Falcon would never be able to do. Ever. And you decide to have him retire. I got issues with that. I got issues with that. I that's the same. I know we're not talking about DC, but that's like my big thing with like Batman. He's my favorite DC superhero. But constantly, I'm seeing him as a retired guy. I thoroughly enjoyed seeing him in a resurgence with Michael Keaton, but here he is, kind of just, he's grown the beard, he's got the wiry hair, he went a little nutty. You knew what this was when you got into this. You knew what this was when you signed up and you put on the suit. You knew what this was. Ride this out till you are 6 feet under. There is no retirement. There is no, I'm done with this. There is no, I don't want to do this anymore. Let me just retire with my old lady and be an old man and just, no. That's not what this is, sir. I don't like it. I do not accept it. And that is one of the biggest issues that I had with that film. Is that you retired things, you broke things up, just like Guardians of the Galaxy. You knew what this was when you got into it. And for some reason, now you're saying, hey guys, listen, it's been fun. It's been a fun ride. I'm going to go back to Earth. I'm just going to do Earth things. Everybody decided to disband and do their own thing. Why did this turn into some emo sap fest? All of a sudden, that whole last film was just a weird emo sap fest. Drove me nuts. Becky refuses to watch that film. She refused to watch that film. So that's the issue.
Saying a lot of things. Okay. All right. So I'll start at the end and work my way backwards and then start over again. Kind of like Memento. So like I 100% disagree with you about the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. I think it's the best singular franchise the MCU has put together in terms of each film's quality together. Going back to Captain America, I also disagree with you on that one. I think that was a good ending, and I think they wrote a good reason for him to have an ending that's consistent with the entire MCU going forward. That being said, I don't necessarily know or care to appreciate if it's truly faithful to who Steve Rogers is in the comics. But I'll just go back to Hulk. Hulk, I completely understand the frustration around Hulk. And it's kind of like, I go back to like wrestling booking. Like that's where you kind of book yourself into a corner with people like Hulk, because realistically, when On Your Left happens and all the portals open up, Thanos doesn't have a gauntlet. Thanos is just Thanos with his Thanos army. And on the other side of that battlefield is a fully rejuvenated, you've got Thor with 2 weapons right now, although Cap borrowed 1, which also great moment. You've got Doctor Strange. You've got a rejuvenated and revived Scarlet Witch. So if Hulk was full strength at that moment, like, and I forgetting Captain Marvel, who shows up later, right? Realistically, like, how one-sided is that battle really going to be if you don't nerf some of those heroes? Now, I think they probably, and I think they tried. I don't know that I'm not going to defend them and say they were successful. I have issue that they didn't show us the what do you call it, like the assimilation of Banner and Hulk. Like they kind of hinted at it in a deleted scene of Infinity War, but like Hulk, Hulk getting, mollywalloped or dog walked by Thanos in the beginning of Infinity War, I thought was a bold move and like in a good vehicle towards us not seeing Hulk kind of for the rest of the movie, Nevertheless, like at that point, you have to resolve that somehow, right? So like what do you do with that and not have, because Rage Hulk would have Brock Lesnar Thanos. I mean, I believe, like, especially after having lost Natasha. So he has to have something that probably prevents him from being that. In order to have that happen. One, though, I take issue with the fact that they didn't take us through that process, that we just got back to Endgame 5 years later, and all of a sudden we just accept that that's how he is. And like, if you can take us there, I don't mind. But his little just exposition at the diner wasn't enough for me. And also, like, I wouldn't have even minded a throwaway line to remind us that the period of time after the 5 years, like the period of time between Hulk's re-snapping and the end of the movie was probably just a few days. Like, I mean, so of course he's still healing. Like even Thanos was healing from his multiple snaps, but even then, just to be like, yeah, it's probably going to be a few months, but I'll be back in tip top shape in no time. Cap. So Cap, I don't see Cap the way I see Batman. So Batman, I agree with you. Like one of my biggest issues in The Dark Knight Rises was the idea that he was even retired just because somebody died. Like he became Batman because somebody died. His parents, like, and his whole MO is I'm going out to these streets to keep that from happening to someone else, especially another kid, because that's who it happened to be. And so Batman does have the, I'll die in these streets mentality. That makes sense. I don't know enough about Captain America as a comic figure, but I will say from the beginning of the MCU, like Cap was a soldier looking to end the war. I think he was looking to end the war, and he wanted, even when he was shrimpy little super soldier Cap, he wanted peace. He wanted to put down the bullies, but he also wanted acceptance, like he wanted his Peggy without knowing it was Peggy. Like, like he was the first half of every teen makeover movie, like he was, he wasn't all that yet. You know what I mean? And so, he goes through his metamorphosis, and also, like, just side note, I know a lot of people were like, why wasn't Bucky the next Cap instead of Sam? And I love Bucky. I love Bucky as a character, but I have thoughts about Sam not taking the soldier serum is a little I'm not super into that. But I'll go along for the ride. But I think still picking Sam was the right touch, because it was exactly what Dr. What's his name told Steve. He's like, it's not about how strong you are. It's about what's in here. Like, it's the difference between Superman and Zod. It's not how super are you. It's what kind of man are you,
Yeah.
And so Sam was that kind of man, and Bucky, whom I love, is not that kind of man because of the man that he was, not because of the man that he is, because of the man that he was. And like, to put that on Bucky, honestly, narratively is just unfair to him. To put that, and also, not for nothing, we hate this, but Captain America is like the government superhero, and it's a really bad look to have a former Soviet assassin be your government superhero. In that world, that just doesn't, that will not. Yeah. I mean, sadly, in today's day and age, maybe that does. Never mind. But that's politics anyway. So, some of us love Russia more than we used to. All right. So, nevertheless, Guardians of the Galaxy, yeah, my favorite trilogy. I loved the third movie. It was very much a lot about closure, and it took me a couple of viewings of Volume 2 before we got to Volume 3 that I did not realize how much of this whole story was really about Rocket all along. And I have to credit my wife to catching that long before I did, about he is childhood trauma just wrapped up in a fur ball. And you see that more played out in volume 3, which is kind of why it is probably more emotionally depressing throughout it, is him reckoning with his existence. Like it is the person who's found their family and found their peace, now trying to find peace and resolution with the trauma that created them. And like it's every kid who it's Will Smith. It's the how come he don't want me, man movie. Like it's the trying to go back to those places that rejected you or created the worst part of you, and trying to make sense of that, or trying to get closure from that. And that movie did that. But also what I thought was equally good is, one, they didn't really kill any of the heroes this time, which was excellent. And so that gives you the write-off of those characters without killing them, which I think is a bonus. And also, like, it was maybe the most cathartic movie to me was them doing Dog Days Are Over at the end. And you see Dave Bautista, who is top 2 WWE, former WWE star turned actor, by the way, moving on from being a grieving father and widower into being a parental figure again. You see Nebula actually smile after she's been beaten down by every corner of her existence. And she also lost a sister. Quill didn't also, lose his, side chick of the week, and so, and I think they did an honest job of reconciling that the Gamora they had was not the Gamora they lost. And so if she wasn't the same, then you couldn't expect her to find that identical familial kinship that the old Gamora did. That was the hardest one for me to accept at first. I didn't like that at first, but I understand it, I guess. And I'm not, and you know what, and I don't know that you've said this per se, but I didn't. And also a lot of that movie was just about making amends with the origins of your trauma, because Peter goes back to Earth. And he goes back to the family that that he was taken away from. And like that whole movie is about him learning to find family. And like sometimes you have to find family and have a found family before you're strong enough to confront the family that burned you. And he was strong enough by the end to go back and see his grandfather and make amends and discover that he was actually missed and loved in his absence, and these kinds of healing sort of things. I will say, well, Sophie, every Guardians movie was about Peter. I mean, like, it's just, the first one was about all of them. The second was about Peter's dad. Third's about Rocket. But like, Peter is still the main. He's still the lead guy. The ending, that sort of tease that a lot of superhero movies do when they're like, just in case we get enough money to do this again, here's who your next team's going to be. Like that shot, I'm always like, yeah, okay, fine, whatever, whatever. But I thought, and that's the thing, right? And I go back to like Civil War, right? As an example, the Civil War storyline was one of the biggest Marvel storylines they had, right? Yes. And that really stretched down deep into the roster of Marvel characters. But Marvel Studios and Disney didn't have access to all those characters at that time. So they had to make good with what they had. And thank goodness we at least got Spider-Man in that one, right? And so even the plot didn't really barely followed the comic at all. So they just worked with what they had, right? And so, I look at the MCU and I do think a lot of the major theatrical films still to this day do a good job of making good with what they have. Not all of them. I think Eternals is a beautiful film, and I think it's a really good it's kind of like the Jaden Smith Karate Kid movie to me. Like if you didn't slap that label on it, I think I'd actually like it a lot more. But then you bring it into this world with all this with all these other expectations that we already have, and then you're like, I don't know about all this.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I feel about that. The last Ant-Man I thought was not good. That was probably the first real major theatrical MCU movie I saw that I'm like, oh, this is just not good. And so far that's the only one that I'll say that about. The rest of them I'll be like, okay, I can get into this. I liked the Marvels. Like there's a lot of people who didn't like the Marvels, but like I absolutely love Kamala Khan. Like I think her casting is perfect. And that's one, I think she's super underrated in this like new phase of things, because they've probably figured out now, we can't cast all A-listers anymore because A-listers don't want to do 10 movies with us. So let's find some people who aren't A-listers who still fit the bill. And like Ms. Marvel, like Kamala Khan, like she's so good in who that character is. Like I think she's great. And then like Daredevil Born Again, which I know we're getting to Disney Plus when I say that, but Daredevil Born Again, excellent. Disney at least showing that they can abide by the vibe of what that show has been since it was on Netflix. And they even went a little harder than Netflix did in the last episode with a couple of scenes. I was like, whoa, Disney, pump the brakes, dog. Deadpool is probably telling you to slow down. Like also Deadpool and Wolverine, just great stuff. So anyways, I respect what they've been able to do. And I think that, I think you make some good points. I deviate a little bit on Cap and Guardians, but I can totally see where you're going with Hulk. But also, like, if we had Ragnarok Hulk in Infinity War and in Endgame, like, I mean, do you think there's a way to have still kept the threat there like it was?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, this could have been done very, very simply. Thanos is extremely strong, even if he didn't have the gauntlet at that time. We saw it. We saw it happen with that fight. We let Hulk got in some licks. Thanos just let him have it. It almost tickled him, and then he went at him.
Yeah. Well, that fight, he already had a Power Stone too, though.
Well, yeah, no, that's true. So I absolutely think that what we could have gotten, again, learning back from history, this could have been a Rocky IV situation. This could have been a Rocky Drago situation where you've got this seemingly impossibly strong individual that nobody can beat, and you finally punch him, and you draw a little bit of that blood. You really shock him. He's that's exactly what I'm saying.
He's a man.
We didn't get it. Stephen, we didn't get it. They absolutely could have done that. And I'm not saying that he could have just beaten Thanos down or anything like that. There was a lot of moving parts in that scene. What I am saying is that is something that they could have worked out because they wrote it. And they wrote it the way that they wrote it. And they could have wrote it differently to at least give us something. Give us that rematch.
I am going to self-pause a little bit. They did rob us of Hulk because that, and you know what? I'm actually going to agree with you with Hulk because of something I just remembered. One of my favorite things about that last fight was from the moment the big three were walking down towards Thanos, and like just one of the coldest lines in any movie, like, could not live with your own failure. So where did that bring you? Back to me. Which, by the way, Gunther needs to drop that line one of these days. Like that's just such a like that's just such a his type of heel line. Anyway, from that moment, from the first fight, the first blows of the fight there, all the way to the end, nearly every hero who had a personal beef with Thanos got their shots in.
Thank you.
Except Hulk. And you're right about that. He did not get that. And like even one-armed Hulk could have gotten a few, a few Rocky Balboa jabs, because what I'm remembering is like as much as I loved, like, I mean, like everyone loves Cap with Mjolnir and talk about booking. Remember I said earlier, like just to knock Andre the Giant to the ground was a feat of everything. Like Thanos had not been knocked off his feet, I think, since we had met him.
Yeah.
Until Cap held the hammer and ran right at him and headshot right away and busted his helmet in half and took him down. Like, that was like watching Hogan slam Andre to me, like, for the first time. I'm like, dude, it's like when the giant heel finally gets knocked to the ground, and there's a moment of hope and all that, right? Nevertheless, Hulk could have had something, because an underrated part of that, which I don't think gets as much credit, was just how overpowered Scarlet Witch was when she got one-on-one with him. Yeah. Because honestly, everything you're describing, they kind of gave to Scarlet Witch. And I don't mind them giving it to Scarlet Witch. I just wish Hulk also had it, because she had the rage of him murdering Vision right in front of her.
Yep.
She had, you took everything from me. And then all she did was just she gave it the old Dwayne Johnson, the old 3, and ripped his armor right off. That actually led to something, Dwayne. But anyway, so like this, I mean, so she was doing all, she had to make him drop bombs on his own people just to get salvation. And so, like, that was talk about putting somebody over, right?
And think about this. It was a whole Disney series. WandaVision was created out of her grieving.
Yes.
Think about that.
Yeah. The investment. Yeah. So they invested fully into her character, into the psychological effects of her journey. And like, all that was good and right. And I'm glad that they did that. Didn't love the way that show ended necessarily, but like the way it was going, like, it was so much more positive than negative about the Scarlet Witch experience. And so I agree with you. I think they really still have time to kind of explore what has this done to Hulk, like, and I do think this too. I think somebody said it in the chat earlier. We do have a Universal problem with Hulk still, because Universal still owns rights to solo Hulk projects.
Yeah.
Just like how Sony owns rights to solo Spider-Man projects.
Yeah.
But they have worked out Spider-Man deals. Don't tell me they can't work out a Hulk deal. Like, just don't tell me that when they straight up bought Fox to get the X-Men back, and they got Deadpool and the Fantastic Four stuff. Like, don't tell me, Disney, you don't have enough money to just walk up to Sony and be like, I'm the captain now. Yeah. Peter Parker comes with me. And so does Eddie Brock, by the way, and the rest of the Sinister Six. And then drive on down to Universal Studios and be like, Banner comes with me now. Like, I know if they really want it, they can do it. And like, so like, yeah, like, do that. And I do think, now, again, I don't know a ton about comic Hulk, but he would probably need to be in a place like a Planet Hulk where he is outmatched to have to have a need to tap back in to that side of himself, right? To do that. So I don't think that's a bad idea. Yeah.
And I'll tell you another thing. The size difference. I mentioned this, and let me know what you think about this. I mentioned this in the chat. The size difference, because you watch She-Hulk, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and you watched the Edward Norton Hulk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, him and Abomination.
Okay. Him and Abomination, and then you had him and Abomination and She-Hulk. There was a significant size difference in She-Hulk than there was in the Hulk film. Significant. And that
of Hulk himself.
Yeah. Like,
yeah, I don't think I feel like ever since he turned into Smart Hulk, he seems a little smaller.
And that's I see, dude,
because Ragnarok Hulk was bigger. I mean, but honestly, though, you know what? You could probably explain that in that he's probably smaller because he's less rage filled. I mean,
yeah,
I'm not saying that makes it okay, but like, you could use that though as an explanation, so that way you could taper back Banner a little bit more and make him bigger again. But
I suppose,
I don't know. I mean, I think there's. Do you? Or well, let's ask this because we're getting close to our agreed upon wrap up time. Thank you guys, everybody, for sticking with us. By
We'll
the
have
way,
to
and
do
if
this
you
again. I know.
yeah, if you guys enjoyed it, let us know in the chat, and we'll do this again. We'll have a different topic. Maybe we can talk about Batman. It looks like we have a little bit of beef about Batman earlier today. I got plenty I can say about Batman. If you guys want me to be want me to be negative, I can be negative about Batman. Been a Batman fan for a long time. All right, so let's make you the booker, AJ. I'm going to give you the. I don't actually have a pen with me, but I was going to gesture, hand you a pen. Kevin Feige, I did read, is actually leaving about after Secret Wars. I hear he's stepping down from the MCU after Secret Wars, like he's out. Which honestly might be the best for him because I imagine this is an overwhelming job, especially for as large as all the properties are now, which makes me whatever. Maybe we can talk about that another time. But he's going to be gone. So after you have the pen now. You're the you're driving. You are the captain now. Fix Hulk for me in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Do whatever you want.
No problem. Here's the situation. Here's what I would have done. Number one, I'm not entirely sure why they were fully invested with Professor Hulk the way that they were. He's a fine character and he has his place. I have no issues with that. But and then thinking about it, that's probably the reason why he was mortally wounded, because he was Professor Hulk and not just regular Hulk. And that was a mistake. No, and now I'm really fleshing this out. That was a mistake. There's no reason to do that. Hulk at his core is an abomination. Him in and of itself, he's an abomination, and he's struggling constantly to find his place. And he finally found something. He was able to communicate with the Avengers in that very first Avengers film, and Hulk smash. He did his thing, and he understood. It was brilliant. It was brilliant. That's
Can I just say real quick, at that moment in Avengers, right before they do the big circle shot and like everybody, all the aliens see Hulk do his thing for the first time, us too, and they start taking off their masks and screaming at him. That one scream he does back at him was like the most like Jacob Fatu Road Warrior, like just primal. Like I made me want to scream at the top of my lungs. So you're like, oh, you want to scream? I'll show you a scream. Just like,
you have no idea.
13 years later,
no idea.
13 years later, still makes the hair on my arm stand up. That moment where he just screams right back at him. I'm like, yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Just think about that. The power that is contained in the body of the Hulk is immeasurable. And the fact that power couldn't even scratch the surface on Thanos in their first meeting says a lot. That says to me, we are owed a rematch with him. They should have stayed. I would have, if I had my pen, if I had a way to figure this out, I would have had, if you had Hulk somehow going to the bottom of that chasm, holding Natasha, he had to have Natasha's body in his hands. He had to see her broke. We needed that moment, because I'm gonna go back to Star Trek. Me being a Star Trek nerd, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. They killed off Spock, and Star Trek fans lost their ever-loving mind. They think, hey, this is what we're gonna do, and let's just move on. Star Trek 3 came into being because of the audience takeover, if you will. No, we will not go on with another Star Trek if you do not bring back this main character. We fast forward several years to Star Trek: The Next Generation, and they do the same thing with the beloved character that is Data. In their last film, they decided, in all their genius, let's kill off Data, and we're going to bring this dumber android, and we can allow you to kind of figure something out, and you can work with that. Well, they didn't have another shot, and this is before we're going to start bringing back other characters, and you'll have your own spin-off show. That was it. We were stuck with it. And if you're not going to learn from that, then what are we doing? So if you're not going to figure out a way, and if I had the pen here, I'd say, okay, we've got to figure out a way to get Hulk, and maybe Bruce Banner should have been the guy that was there instead of Hawkeye. But Yeah, I don't know. I've got to go back and kind of give that some thought and how I would work that in. But I can, in my mind, I can just see Hulk, Professor Hulk, if you will, holding Natasha's broken body, and he looks up and a single tear comes out, and his eyes turn red. Like you can see, you see a color change in him. That's what should have happened. We should have gotten something similar between Ragnarok and what film was that we had the Hulkbuster? Which one was that again?
Infinity War or Ultron?
Was that the
no, he was in the Hulkbuster suit in Infinity War.
Infinity War, right? That's when Scarlet Witch messed with him, right?
Yeah, no,
we should have had, because he Scarlet Witch messed with him, and with the Hulkbuster.
That was Age of Ultron. So Age of Ultron is where he fought Hulkbuster.
Okay,
Infinity War is when Banner was inside Hulkbuster.
Yeah, no, not that. I don't want him inside it. Like when he was fighting
Ultron.
We should have had Hulks at the very minimum between those two. And I would almost dare to say World Breaker Hulk. I would want to hear, if you go back to the original Jurassic Park and you saw the scene where you've got the Tyrannosaurus Rex and you see the water is just shaking, with the footsteps.
We need
that's the Hulk. Do you feel what I'm saying? That's the Hulk that we should have got. We should have got something that everybody on that playing field needed to turn and look as what the heck is going on right now. We needed to see a little bit of fear in Thanos' eyes.
You would need a little bit of legwork to make this happen again, but they have reintroduced Liv Tyler into the MCU from Brave New World. Yeah, who was Hulk's first love interest. I mean, she was Edward Norton's, but not Mark Ruffalo's, but still someone with a close, affectionate relationship with Hulk. So, if you wanted to try to trigger back to that rage, you could work with that relationship, even if it's not making it a romantic relationship again, but like taking someone from him in that way. I mean, I don't know, but I think you're right though. It's going to have to be something intensely personal for him to lose it again. And then you do have to kind of sort of book that though, because a Hulk off the chain is a liability, so, you definitely have to put it in a situation where it's going to make sense.
And I think we've got it now. Yeah. I think we've got it now. But see, here's the thing.
I can see him in Secret Wars. That would be a great time for him to go off the leash.
And I'm wondering who he would go up against, right? Like you had you had Thanos, and you had Captain America, and you had that scene where he's pushing down, and Captain America's really the strength. And you saw in that brief moment, Thanos was really like, this is not like he was really taken aback for a second. Now, granted, he flicked him away
still,
but we couldn't even get that.
Yeah, Thanos is selling.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Thanos had 2 sell points that were like that. One is the one you just said, and the second was on your left in the portal scene. I don't know how many people caught it, but I saw it the first time and I look for it every time. So like Steve is turning a 360, right? He's watching everything around him. He's watching his faith literally being restored as it's happening in front of him, which is really beautiful, too beautiful for a comic book movie, if you ask me. That moment of him realizing he's not alone. And like Chris Evans gets all the credit in the world for me for not saying a word and seeing him turn slowly from hopelessness to hope to faith to you better get in where you fit in. Like that's what, by the time he's turned back around and facing Thanos again, he's like, War Rogers, it's about to happen. Like the soldier is back at that point. And when that happens, Thanos has been in battle stance the whole time and his sword drops. He's like, why do these people not look scared anymore? Like, and it's almost it's an intimidated confusion almost that he portrays. And like the 2 times in the MCU he did that, it was both Captain America, incidentally, were just excellent choices. So yeah, I mean, I think there is still an opportunity for Hulk to be redeemed in the format that we've all grown accustomed to him being, over all that time. And so I think he just needs a good wide open space and a lot of trashing to be able to do a lot of smashing, if you will. And I think they could do it. Hopefully Universal will just do business, man. I mean, TNA did business. I'm just saying. All right, we'll hear one more question before we wrap up. So the next one in the batter's box for the MCU is Fantastic Four next month. What's your gauge on Fantastic Four?
Oh man. I'm a little concerned. Okay. I gotta disagree with you on this one, homeboy. I absolutely did not like Eternals. I was upset that I paid money to see that film. I was so mad. I was so mad at that movie.
That was the difference. I didn't pay to see it.
Okay, then I maybe I would have enjoyed it better, but no, I was.
Yeah, it's a good.
Oh man, I was so mad. So I'm not looking, and I'm only saying that to say it has a lot to live up to, and I like the nostalgic feel it's giving, which is really cool. I will tell you right out of the gate, I already don't like the voice.
Whose voice?
Of what's his name? The Rock.
The Thing.
The Thing. Thank you. I'm like the Rock guy. The Thing. I already don't like his voice. It's too light for me. It's too light. It doesn't give it. It's like Brock Lesnar. It's like Mike Tyson. Like, these are big, strong guys, and they have these really light voices.
Yeah,
they just don't seem to. It doesn't match.
The voice doesn't
match.
I'll agree. There's not a lot of gravity in his voice. And Eben Boss Bacharach, the actor, like, I love him because he's in The Bear. I don't know if you ever watched the show The Bear, but he's in that, and he's amazing in that show as well. But I will say this, and it's just me holding out hope that maybe it would change. I always felt like some of the depth of his voice was because of the shame and humiliation he lived in for being a visual freak, right? Like, coming back to Earth. He's the only one of the 4 of them that can't pass for human in public, and he has to deal with that. Like, I mean, he had a blind girlfriend in the Fox version, right? Like, but in this version, this alternate Earth, wherever this is taking place, because this isn't the main Earth that they're on.
Yeah.
They are public figures who are widely celebrated by the public. So, like, he doesn't actually, like, there's kids on the street being like, lift that car. So I almost wonder if maybe some of the lightness in his voice has to do with the fact that they're not rejected. But I know he's a good enough actor to make that change if they bring it up to him. I'll say that. But I hear what you're saying, and I don't know. I might just be, conjecturing that there's a connection there. But I'm a little concerned about. I'm first of all, I've already got my tickets. I'm going to go see it because I think it's going to be good. But I'm a little concerned because Disney made a Fantastic Four movie 20 years ago called The Incredibles. Which was and still is amazing. Speaking of the first Incredibles movie, second Incredibles movie was good too, but the first one was really something special. And when Pixar was just banger after banger, and like, I'm just gonna have unconscious expectations, with what they did there, and also, I mean, I'm not spoiling anything for anybody because I don't know what's gonna happen, but the entire tone and theme of the trailer is there's an unknown, which it's Galactus. We all know it's Galactus, but say there's an unknown threat coming to this Earth and we will protect you. And we know that Doomsday and Secret Wars are coming. I'm not sure they're going to win this fight. Like, I could really foresee this movie ending with them losing their Earth. And like, that is a bold choice to start off with for that. And I just wonder how that would work. This is kind of like, you know what this is kind of like, this has got me worried, is when you sacrifice a perfectly good feud because you know you have a big star coming in later.
Yeah.
It's the CM Punk 2011, 2012 thing. Like, we're gonna, you're getting over too fast, so Triple H is gonna come out of retirement, beat you, and then go back into retirement. Oh, Rock wants to be a babyface. Well, you're turning heel. Sorry about those merch checks, and you're dropping the title, and you're not going to be in WrestleMania. So I wonder if they're thinking a little too hard about Doomsday and Secret Wars. I hope that they still give enough story and attention to this actual movie. So I don't know. I like the castings. I mean, I just saw a movie with Pedro Pascal in it today, and reminded how good of an actor he is. I love the other three as well. Vanessa Kirby, which she wasn't in the last Mission Impossible, but she was in the one before that. She's super good. And so you know what? I'm very interested to see. I'm curious, and I'm going to go see it. But I think that for me, and maybe we'll talk about this next time, if we talk DC or Batman or whatever else, I might come out of July preferring Superman to Fantastic Four. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Those two of them yet to be seen. And I know Mr. Corn Sweat is not your bag, but we'll see what July brings us.
We're gonna go see. We're gonna go see Superman. We'll see. That's all I'm gonna say is we'll see. But you're right in regards to Fantastic Four. I don't want to compare it to the Eternals. I'm simply like as the film, but what I mean ultimately by that is my concern is sort of like what they're doing with, like, say, EO Sky, where your sole purpose right now is to get over other talent, and I don't want the Fantastic Four to be used to get over another film. Like, this whole point of this film is just to set up something else. That would kind of bum me out. I like you said, I hope they give this film the attention that it needs. The trailer looks really, really interesting, and I'm really curious to see how this is gonna play out. I like the fact that they, in a different universe, we already kind of got Stretch, like we already kind of got like that taste of the Fantastic Four. Obviously different actor, but that's totally fine. So I like that. I like that we're opening up. I'm not opposed to a multiverse. I just, like with Deadpool and Wolverine, like they righted a lot of wrongs in that film that I was all for. And even the Loki series on Disney Plus. I like it. I like the idea that there are these different things and you can pull and there's cross sections and into the Spider-Verse. Like it's good. It's good for business, I think.
Yeah.
And we've seen that many times. I'm just a little concerned
as long as each franchise is given its proper attention, like you said, because you can look even within Marvel and take Guardians of the Galaxy, take Captain America, take I won't put Thor on that list. There was one other I had in my mind though that has sequels, and you can look at their sub trilogies, and they're great. They're great storylines all the way through. Oh, Spider-Man. Yeah. So the Tom Holland Spider-Mans. Those three properties, you can watch them as an individual movie. You could watch them as a character-centric trilogy, or you could see them in service of the greater story. And it works on all three of those levels, all three of those franchises. And so, they would be stupid not to give Fantastic Four that kind of respect, because Fantastic Four historically is one of the hallmark factions of Marvel. They're one of the OGs. They're the Horsemen, baby. Like get them and the X-Men and Spider-Man, like at the beginning, like those guys. They're the foundations. So like, I mean, they would be smart to do that. So we'll see.
And that's why I'm afraid, because you said it's the Horsemen, and I'm going to go to see this film, and it's going to look like the Horsemen were there. They took a dump in the ring, and they left that.
That is the perfect bow on the story. Galactus.
Oh, man.
You're going to learn that jumping on is a lot easier than jumping on.
See, that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, they better not.
Sophie has suggested we do this once a month. What do you think?
I'm for it, man. I think it's a nice little one-off. I think everybody's here. Everybody's here with us. While we're wrapping things up, you guys are just for posterity's sake, not that we're gonna contractually obligate ourselves to listen to you. Throw some topics in the comments if you. And that might just inspire us to something we'd rather talk about instead. But I know Batman and the DC was already kind of tossed about a little bit earlier, but let us, know movie wise, what would you guys want us to talk about next? Because we would love to. I'd love to have a little movie homework to do as well. While we're doing that, giving you guys a chance to comment on that. Attention to the banner below. If you want to see me on Instagram or TikTok, my screen name there is screen.stream.shelf. Just saw, speaking of Pixar earlier, talking about The Incredibles, my wife and I went to see the new Pixar film Elio last night, which is really, really good. The thing I love about Pixar is that like they have thematic elements in their movies and their stories that are, I mean, a lot of animated films are good for grown-ups too, but they ask really kind of deep questions. Like, I mean, even The Incredibles was about like, is it okay to be special in a world where everybody wants everybody to be the same? Like, I mean, what does it mean to be special and to show that? And then, and a lot of Elio is on a human level and on a cosmic level is just about, are you truly alone? And that the emotion in that question is amazing. And the way they've played that out. And it's got all the, hallmarks of goofy stuff. You'll appreciate this, AJ. Not many people I know probably would have, but since we're from similar generations, I'm holding out hope that you'll catch this. They had a character, because this is a movie about being abducted by aliens and life on other planets and stuff. There is a character in the film called Melmac.
What?
Yeah, one of the just like the last name of one of the NASA workers. It's just named Melmac, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's an Alf reference, and I don't think anybody in this room probably catch it, because it's just, I mean, like a jet flying at the speed of sound, just whoosh, just flew over everybody's head, and I just leaned over to Mrs. Marked by Wrestling. I was like, that was totally an Alf reference. Anyway, so good. That was Elio though.
Gosh,
good stuff. So anyways,
gosh, that's hilarious.
Saw that. So see a couple of references, suggestions. Harry Potter. Have you seen? That's a deep thing, because they're redoing that. They're relaunching Harry Potter as a series on HBO Max. I heard. Which is probably going to do big numbers, because I heard AEW brings in like 500,000 people every week. So I should probably do that.
It'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, no, that's hard to replicate. Okay, well, yeah, and I think Batman and maybe even Batman specifically. I don't even know if we need to get into the greater DC at this point, but
when does Superman come out? Next month?
Superman is July 11th, so I think the second week.
Okay.
So if I'm doing my math correctly, if the 4 weeks in July, you've got Jurassic Park in the first week.
Yeah.
You've got Superman after that. Then you've got a week in between, and then you've got Fantastic Four in the fourth week. So I'm sure there's something coming out in that third week too, but probably the three most expensive movies of the summer are coming out within 3 weeks of each other. So
okay, so I think it would be fair if we're going to do this once a month, which I'm totally game for. Considering we've got 2 superhero films coming out next month, I think we should do this at the end of the month. Guaranteed to watch Fantastic Four, guaranteed to watch Superman. But I think the next one we could talk more, focus on maybe DC and Superman specifically. We can touch on the MCU as well. I think that might be good. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's definitely, and I'll be very interested to talk about DC after Superman comes out as well, because I had a lot of criticisms about the DC in those first few phases of Marvel, because it felt like they were just counter programming, so to speak, with a lot of their
films.
a
shambles. It was a shambles.
Yeah.
It was a
hot mess.
It
was Vince Russo booking. It was just terrible. It's just terrible.
It has some moments. Like I said, even a bad movie has some good points. Even a bad PLE, a PPV has got some highlights, if you will. But no, the DC universe was just a train wreck that just kept chugging along. Like, just stop. Just stop. And I understand that this is what this retool is supposed to be. We shut it down. We flushed it down the toilet. We're starting fresh. We're starting new. All right, DC, you've got my attention. I'm going to sit my butt down in that theater and I'm going to watch this Superman. And I'm telling you right now, I'm fully prepared to crash out if this film is in fact a bag of garbage.
Well, I'll tell you this. Preliminary thoughts going into next episode is one thing James Gunn does incredibly well is draw the humanity out of the absurd. If you had told me I was going to be weeping over a film about a talking raccoon and a talking tree when we were surrounded by things like Iron Man and Captain America and, Thor and stuff, I mean, like, you're crazy and you're weird. Don't ever say that to me again. And here I am. Guardians is probably one of the most beloved franchises I have. As an adoptive father, I was not expecting all the connective tissue in that as well, which really means a lot to me personally. And one of my biggest beefs with Zack Snyder's Superman, not Henry Cavill. I want to say this because I thought that movie was casted exceptionally well. I thought Kevin Costner and Diane Lane were great choices for the Kents. I thought, Henry Cavill is a great cast for Superman. Dude is Superman, But then talk about emo. Superman should never have to decide if he wants to be Superman. Because and I'll say this, and I'm not saying this because, I'm an adoptive dad and stuff like that. And I'm trying to, put over the Kents or whatever like this. But I'm going to say this because someone else said this and I'm ripping them off. And I can't remember who said it, but like being born on Krypton is what made him super. But being raised by good people is what made him a Superman. Like that is the quality that would have gotten him the super soldier serum if he was Steve Rogers. Was his upbringing and caring about people, loving people, wanting to all the stuff he was crashing out about in that trailer. Like I don't belong to any country. I go, all that other stuff. Sophie, I've never seen Smallville. I believe it or not. Anyway, but she's assuming I'm into Smallville, which killer theme song though. Anyways, so I'm very excited that James Gunn, first of all, I saw very quick clips in the trailers of him interacting with the Kents, which seems really special. And also the Kents this time around look like a dozen old couples I would have known growing up in Georgia. Like, look so average and so ordinary. And I think there's something special about that they're just ordinary good people. Because that is part of the magic of Superman too, is that like maybe none of us have powers, but we can all still be good people. With the right environment, with the right drive, with the right things being poured into us. Anyway, but so much more on that after. I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll crap the bed and his dad will tell him to, drown a school bus full of kids too. We'll see. But excuse me, not drown them, but just not save them.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, nevertheless. But anyway, I'm looking very forward to that next time. We'll talk about that next time.
Yeah.
Listen, everybody, thank you all for coming out. Thank you for encouraging us to do this again. We'll see you again roughly a month from now. I mean, we see you guys every week, but we'll see you roughly a month from now, and we'll talk about Superman. We'll talk about the DC. We'll talk about whatever you guys have to say. So thank you guys for the time, and we will see you again very soon. Later.